and they start in November. And so they've reached out to us to say, hey, do you think we're going to be able to have a season this year? And so we met with Chris Enyart and Terry and I and Aaron, and we were talking through, okay, what kind of modifications do we want to have if they have games? Things like only one pair of teams in the gym at a time, and so they have to build in a gap between the games so that they clear the facility before the next group comes in. We think with so much of what we're doing with regular sports and regular extracurriculars that we have to at least consider this because so many students participate. And so I wanted the board to know that we're looking at this. We also talked about walkers. Is there a way for us to, instead of just running circles around the field house, is there a way for us to design some type of a course that will go through the hallways to spread people out even more? And so we're looking at that as well. But it's important that we are making a short list of requirements for people to come into the facility, for whether it's youth basketball or whatever. And then we're asking them to provide us with what the measures are they think they'll take, and then we'll look at each one individually and decide. Because some of the things are trickier to do when we think about a dance recital that we had here not that long ago. There are a lot of people going a lot of different ways, and some things will be easier to structure than others. That's why we want to take it one item at a time. But I wanted the board to know that we had begun those discussions. And since those things start, 6 weeks from now, we really need to continue to talk through them and decide what we can do to try to accommodate our people who paid for this beautiful place without being the host of, as I like to call it, a super spreader event where we have no structure and we have no PPE and things like that. So any questions about facility rentals from the board?
I have a question. I was approached by a couple of band booster parents, and the rumor on the street is that they will not be allowed to have their Christmas craft fair. Will that be discussed?
Well, we haven't had that conversation yet, but, like a lot of things, I think you'd have to control the number of people in the facility at a time, like Walmart does. I mean, I wouldn't rule things out. I just think we have to have some controls. Because there are times, if you've been to one, where at the high traffic time, it's a mob. And I don't think we want that. It may also require us to spread them out better. Have to think about whether we want people selling homemade or prepared food on site. There are other things that we have to look at. So I would suggest that they reach out to us and begin that dialogue for that event. I know it's a good fundraiser for them. So it feels like something we can do. Maybe it just has to be different.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No.
Okay. My next item then is, and I think we have some guests in the audience who want to hear a little bit about this discussion. We have been talking with our teacher leaders about additional teacher preparation time in response to the start of the school year, which has been rather stressful in a lot of different ways for a lot of different folks. Our teachers, remember, are instructing students both in person and at home. Even at the elementary where we're doing them standalone, it's a much more stressful environment than it's been in the past. Our elementary teachers as well now are finding out the added need to address students who've been quarantined. So when students are quarantined, they participate and look in at the instruction that's taken place. And we believe it's really important for our students to be able to stay as current as possible because they, in many cases, are admitting that a parent tested positive, so they're staying home willingly, and we don't want to punish them We appreciate their honesty, but we also want to try, like we're doing with everything else, to make it the best year it can possibly be, even if it's less than what we've done in the past. We need to make it as strong of a program as possible. Many other districts, as you probably know, have cut their cohorts in half. Some of our neighbors even, and they're getting significantly less instructional time than our students. And we appreciate our staff following our model, where we're getting as much instructional time as we think we can have, whether the students are, again, in person or at home. We realize that any schedule change or adjustment that we make certainly can be a hardship for parents of elementary students. Anytime that you change the schedule in school, according to the normal schedule, it requires an adjustment on the part of those parents and guardians. So we recognize that before I say anything else. We've considered basically three main different types of options. One was a late arrival. Everybody knows that Lake Central, we've never had late arrival other than a fog or snow delay. Many districts have used it for professional development in the past. We've been asked many times to use it for professional development. We really value our student instructional time and have resisted that option. But my peers who do it tell me that the parents in their districts prefer early release over late arrival. So we sort of push the late arrival to the side for now. Early release, in order to ensure that every student gets a lunch, for us to do early release, we'd be limited to a 90-minute early release if we chose to go that route. Again, our parents have to arrange for childcare at a time that's earlier than what they're accustomed to. I think our Adventure Club may be able to serve some students and come to the school early, but it would probably be on a bit of a limited basis if they needed to stay at school until the normal dismissal time at elementary. Another option that has been popular this year is what I call whole or near whole day of passive learning. Some of our neighbors in Valparaiso, Chesterton, and Hobart are doing it. Valparaiso and Chesterton are doing it every Wednesday. Every Wednesday. Hobart's doing it one Wednesday a month. Our teachers, when we met with them, they were not comfortable with having school days without interaction with their students. So they prefer, and I would say that based on what the union president told us, it was about 60% of the membership that was surveyed preferred the early dismissal over the full day. And I gather from our conversation they don't want it to feel like last spring where kids go a whole day without having teacher interaction, and I appreciate that, as do I think our fellow central office administrators. The longer period of time, think about like Hobart doing it one day a month, might be easier on parents to have to arrange it for one day a month versus a weekly thing for a 90-minute period. But again, we don't think it would be as productive for our students. Blocking time for...
I apologize to interrupt. Did you say that you're looking at this to give teachers more playing time?
Can you hear me? Mrs. Lessentine, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. I guess the sound's working then. Yeah, that's a...
My sound has always been working for how they have me.
Okay, and I sent you my talking points in an email.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to verify right now when you're talking about the extra time is for teachers to be able to plan, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And again, anything that we would do, but what I was talking about with the longer period of time, I think it could be beneficial in some ways, and both options have some pros and cons. But I do like the idea of our students getting that direct interaction with their teachers every day.
What did you say that the union president mentioned as far as the percentage?
They polled their members, and 60% preferred early release over one whole day. And we would not be totally comfortable with a whole day either. We were talking about possibly having 90 minutes of office hours, for lack of a better term, where teachers would be available at the beginning of the day for students as they work their assignments off Canvas. But our teachers prefer the opposite. And I'm not saying there aren't some teachers who would want the whole day. Some people answered the other way, right? It was only 60%. But
So did they survey the teachers early release versus late start?
no, we didn't talk about late start. Because Jeremy? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So anyway, to just let the board know that any change to our schedule, we consider it a really big thing. And we've made changes, and, this is a difficult time, and we don't really want to make more, but we feel that it's important for us to consider this. And so it's not an action item tonight, but I do think it's something we want the board to strongly consider. And, if we have the open discussion, if we have some staff members who want to chime in here in a little bit, I think we suspend our normal rule and let them speak now while, we're not voting on anything. And that way we do it when it's more pertinent. We'd also like to look into more districts besides just Lake and Marion County. If you look at the front of that sheet, the school districts that I looked into in the last few days were Lake and Marion County schools. So maybe we can take a look at Evansville and Fort Wayne and a couple other bigger suburban areas to see what people like us are doing. Maybe somebody's doing something else. But if the board wishes to move forward with a change, then in the next couple of days, I'd like for us to schedule an extra meeting, not an emergency meeting, but an extra meeting next Monday for just one item to consider any schedule change. To do that, of course, remember, we need to post that meeting by Thursday afternoon. I want to say one more time that over the course of history, Lake Central, not just since Larry's been superintendent, but as long as I can remember, we have been very protective of student instructional time. So I want the board to remember, and I want the public to hear that we value the student instructional time greatly. And we don't take cutting any school day short lightly. But we also are in a situation where things are really very different, and the amount of extra work required to pull this off is really wearing our people down. And we have to take that into consideration. I would also say that our intent would be, as soon as we can go back to a regular schedule with every student coming into the building for in-person instruction, we would return to our regular schedule. So I'd open it up now for any questions from the board first, and then unless you want to hear from some teachers first, if they would like to weigh in.
Madam President? Madam President?
Can we let Sandy go first since she's
Fine.
remote? Thanks.
Go ahead, Ms. Lessentine.
Thank you. I was going to say, I know people might be thinking that we're cutting instructional time by giving teachers plan time, but in my opinion, by giving teachers plan time, we're going to actually increase instructional strategies and time that's going on. So in my opinion, before even hearing from anyone, I'm going to say I am completely on board with helping teachers right now and giving them, figuring out a way to build time into the schedule, because I don't know what I would do. School didn't do that for us. So I'm on board already. I don't think it's cutting instruction time. I think it's going to actually build instruction.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall?
At this point, I couldn't fully understand Sandy. Apparently from the applause, she said something very positive. I would just like to make a motion to concur with Dr. Veracco's suspension of normal board procedure and allow teachers to come forward with their thoughts at this point. So that's an official motion.
We have a motion
I'll second that.
Second. All right, all in favor, well, all right. So Mr. Marshall in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Roll call.
Mr. Baxo?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Lessentine?
Aye.
And then myself, aye. So with that, we will open it up to the floor. You'll have to, we're going to have them come up here, Dr. Baracco? I don't see a microphone, that's why I'm asking.
Jeremy's going to hook us up.
Jeremy's going to hook us up.
Yeah.
No,
Are we just having them state their name and what school they work at, or?
And let's ask them if somebody already said what they were going to say to abbreviate their comment.
There we go. Somebody like to come up? Ms. Castle?
Okay, my name is Allison Castle. I am an 8th grade English language arts teacher at Clark Middle School, and I'm also the department chair. I'm also a resident of St. John. I would like to begin tonight by saying that I respect everyone's right to be heard and share their opinions in a public forum. I honestly do not blame parents for speaking out in August and wanting the choice to have their child or children back in school instead of the initial 4 weeks of e-learning. I too wanted to be back in school. I also understand as a parent knowing what is best for your child. I have 3 children of my own. With that said, I know that there is a time to trust the experts in the field. We, all of the teachers here and watching from home, are the experts when it comes to education and what is best for our students, as well as what works in and out of the classroom environment with regards to learning. Just a little background, not only do I have my master's degree, but I am also in my 20th year of teaching. I began my teaching career at Gavitt and Hammond and then moved over to Kaler, and now I am at Clark, right down the street from where I live. As a parent and an experienced educator, I am here to let you know that we are struggling, and this current model of teaching calls for a lot of extra prep time, which we currently do not have. So many of us are doing our absolute best to reach the needs of both of our learners at home and in school. In order to reach the needs of both of our learners to the best of our abilities, as we were trained to do, we do need more time to make that happen. I speak as someone who is an optimist and really went into this school year with such a positive attitude. After 5 weeks in the classroom, I am here to tell you that something has to give. To envision myself and so many of my colleagues continuing on this path until the end of May is unrealistic. I have never spent so many hours before and after my already 8-hour day working on things for school. You see, many people that are not in our profession see this situation with an easy solution. Just flip on a webcam. I can tell you it's so much more than that, beyond what many of you can even imagine. We are not only burning our candles at both ends, we are burning it every which way to make this work. Are we making it work? I would say overall, yes. We are making it work because that is what good teachers do. We have come together by departments, by grade levels, by school, and as a corporation to help and support one another. That is where the problem comes in. This is not something we can continue from here on out if you want the quality of our instruction to remain the same or our sanity. Our days consist of trying our absolute best to reach the needs of those students in front of us while checking on our students at home, and the going back and forth allows for very little downtime. We are running on empty. Not to mention, basically all of our content needs to be online for everyone. The time it takes to create all of this is well beyond what we have in a given day. As a department chair, I have heard from so many of my colleagues. The stress this year is overwhelming. The demands of our new roles are overwhelming. We are overwhelmed. I just want to take a moment for you, the school board, to really consider the time teachers need. Currently, I'm sacrificing so much in trying to make this work and work well. At some point, my physical, mental, and emotional well-being needs to be a priority. My kids need their mom. My 3 children have taken a back seat since July, since I was actively preparing for our return back then. They are now used to mom working through dinner, after dinner, even on the weekends. At some point, my family does need to be a priority, especially after I have already put in over 8 hours. I know this is a pandemic and we are all making sacrifices in many different ways, which is exactly why we all need to come together. We heard about all of the children at the board meeting back in August, and rightfully so. The children should be our focus. But has anyone asked about my children? I am dropping mine off at before school care at 6:45 in the morning so I can be at school before 7, an hour before my start time, in the hopes of getting ahead. The sad reality is there is no getting ahead this year. I am lucky if I have everything ready to go a few days in advance, and really, this is being optimistic. Most of us are functioning on a day-to-day basis. Again, I can't emphasize enough the need for our community to come together during this time like other communities have. I don't want an us versus them situation any longer. I am happy to be back in the classroom, the place that is my second home. Going forward, I am asking for support from my entire community. Instead of other communities in our area talking about how heated that August board meeting was and how different groups are battling one another, wouldn't it be great to set an example and use this time to come together? In order to come together, I think it is necessary to understand what is actually a part of our daily life. I am sure so many of you can sympathize with our many challenges and how hard this must be. But unless you are currently in the classroom teaching this way, you have no idea the weight on our shoulders. At this point, I honestly even rarely think about COVID. I am so focused on how to be the best teacher given the current circumstances. Even though education was never meant to function in this way, we are doing what we can to make it work because it is a pandemic. We just need your help now. The somber reality is that my situation is not uncommon. The vast majority of our middle school teachers are in the same situation. We are stretched far too thin. It's so disheartening that I am seriously contemplating what else I can do after 20 years of teaching. Sorry. The answer remains that I do not see myself anywhere but in the classroom. That is where I belong. I just need time and help. We need time and help. What does that look like? Dr. Veracco has given some great suggestions for that, and we are here to say please listen to his recommendations and realize they are much needed for the sake of the students and teachers in this district. Again, I am just asking for help and time in making this more manageable from here on out for teachers in our corporation. We have given so much of ourselves these past 5 weeks, but we are now asking for your help to make it further. I will leave you with 2 quotes that I think really reflect our sentiments of needing help and Dr. Veracco's willingness to work with us in making that happen. First, students deserve great teachers, and teachers deserve the support they need to become great. Right now, so many of us are putting forth the added time and effort to make this model work, but the big missing piece is time to fully accomplish that. And give the students of Lake Central School Corporation the amazing educational opportunities they deserve from teachers that have time to create those plans. Finally, I will leave you with this. Teachers need to take care of themselves in order to take care of their students. My 8th graders have been my driving force throughout these first 5 weeks of school, but I also need to take care of myself to allow that to continue to happen. This is exactly where Dr. Veracco's recommendations to the board fit in. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Is this on? Is that better?
Just, for the live feed.
Oh, so good evening. My name is Nicholas Meyer. I'm the president of the Lake Central Teachers Association, and that's going to be a little hard to follow up with, but I'm going to give it my best.
Nick, can you speak up and maybe take your mask down?
Sure.
Thank you.
Go ahead and hold the mic, Nick, so the people at home can
Okay, thank
know
you.
what you're reading.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the school board, or let the school board and the community know that the teachers need your support. It's been a real challenge for teachers at every level. Every teacher has an increased workload. We have been and continue to do our best, but this additional time will allow us to better meet the needs of both our in-person and e-learning students. We appreciate that the administration and the school board understand that for teachers to be the most effective, we need the time to tackle these additional workloads and the recent changes that have been created. We feel that utilizing the early dismissal once a week will have minimal impact on students' academics and maximum impact and teachers' ability to have the time needed to deliver the quality education during these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the last school board meeting, the teacher shortage and a lack of teachers feeling valued was brought up by this administration and
Sorry,
board.
Can you identify
Oh,
yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Colette Lambert. I'm in my 9th year of teaching, my 6th in this district, and I think that sentiment needs to be louder. I've put up with lots of different policies and politics as a teacher, and I've never felt demoralized, devalued, and disrespected until this year. With 6 days until the start of school, teachers were told they'd now be both in-class teachers and e-learning teachers at the same time. We were thrown into a situation where we were not equipped or trained to best help students. E-learners are not getting the education this district owes them. E-learners are not given the immediate and often feedback best practices they need. I cannot go check the Google Meet chat bar while monitoring my 23 in-class students too, constantly. And while e-learners are encouraged to unmute themselves to ask questions, it's hard for a 12-year-old or 13-year-old to unmute themselves to their voice booming through the speakers to ask for clarification or what we're doing or how they're lost. It can be embarrassing. So I can sit at my desk and monitor e-learners, which isn't best practice, or I can walk around the classroom and then ignore my e-learners. My e-learners often can't hear me or the discussion taking place in class. And again, do I just sit at my desk all day, or do I help the kids in class and have e-learners behind? And when I go outside or to the LGI or to do independent work or group work, as I've been encouraged to give my kids mass breaks, which is impossible to do in my classroom, when we go to the library, the e-learners aren't doing anything. So again, I have to choose between these two different classes. Do I make my in-class kids sit in the classroom and do everything in front of the screen, something we know is bad for kids, so it can be equal to e-learners, or do I give them the variety and movement that they need and leave the e-learners behind? By doing 2 jobs at once, all students are getting a barely acceptable education. Dedicated e-learning teachers create virtual labs, use technology to break kids into groups, individually conference and get to know them, and continuously find the best online resources. Teachers who have to do 2 jobs at the same time don't have the time to put these things together and connect with those kids. Kids are suffering, and it's not because teachers don't care or that we aren't trying, but we've been given no time. When we look to other districts in the area, it becomes apparent there are solutions. Tri-Creek and Hanover understood the stress of e-learning and in-class teaching and how it would affect students, so their secondary e-learners are on programs with designated moderators. Velpa realized just how hard doing this was and saw just how beaten down their teachers were and decided to dedicate Wednesdays to teacher-only days. Once a week, teachers can individually check in and talk with e-learners, plan their e-learning lessons, create videos, and all the other things that come with that job. Other schools care, and I'm glad to see that LC is starting to, but I have to say, and I'm saying this as an individual, I think giving teachers 8 days total isn't enough. The students have to be our #1 priority, but you can't put students first if you always put teachers last. Walking into a building where teachers are crying, exhausted, defeated, and ready to give up isn't an environment where any of the kids are excelling. So I'm imploring this administration, this board, please take a cue from other districts, particularly Velpo, and do what's best for our kids.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question before we get off of that subject that she mentioned, a designated moderator? Would you explain that to me?
So the software Adventum, which we use for our credit recovery, which is unoperated, they pay teachers to basically answer some of these questions on the online program.
So this is part of the Admentum?
Correct.
And the Plato?
We use it for credit recovery. It's simply students are on the computer working self-paced. Adventum does pay teachers to check in with the students, but it is still very much self-paced.
So someone is subcontracted to check in on the students? That makes sense. Does that tie into Indiana Academy? Does that still exist through the service center down there? No, but I'm saying, does Indiana Academy through the service center in Indianapolis still exist? Uh-huh. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
You're fine. Hello, I'm Julie Schupert. This is my 10th year teaching at Lake Central High School, and I've had the honor of teaching some of your children up there as well. First, I just want to say thank you for changing the order of how things are tonight to allow us a chance to speak. And I want to make sure that people understand, because at home, they might be seeing teachers here and they're like, oh, well, they're complaining they don't have enough time to do stuff, and here they're sitting in a meeting. I guarantee every person in this room who is a teacher is feeling the stress in their stomach right now of not being at home and grading, not checking their emails right now. But we felt like it was important enough to come here to try to speak to you, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us. As someone at the high school, as we see at each level, things are very different at all the schools. And I can tell you at our high school, we have a large community, and it has been very interesting trying to balance e-learning and in-person students as we go throughout the year. However, I do have to say it has been kind of nice to have less students in the halls. There have been less issues in that sense. However, teachers are, as has already been said, stretched thin trying to do both jobs at once. I know I try to go around constantly through my room and stop at my computer and back and forth. But then some days while they're working on stuff, I literally have to create the stuff for the very next day. So I'm not getting to sit there and make the connections with my students that I normally would and ask them about their day or what their interests are and keep up with them as we go through things. We also have teachers at the high school who have 3 or 4 different classes they have to prep for. So if you're only prepping one subject, it is not easy regardless. But when you're prepping 4 of them and you're trying to make it so it works for both in person and online, it is very difficult. And we have a lot of subjects that are very hands-on oriented subjects that are now being forced to be taught online and at home. As a science teacher, to try to find a lab that will work for both children takes a lot of effort. And then you either feel like you are disappointing the children in class by not letting them touch chemicals or microscopes when you know those are valuable skills they need, but then you can't leave the others behind while doing that. And I don't even know how our art teachers and others are doing it, because I can't imagine having a ceramics class sitting at home in my house, okay? There are crazy things that are happening. And we want to give our students the rigor they deserve. And any time you guys can give us will be much appreciated. There will never be enough time. This is going to be one of those years where it's never enough. Everything's going to be a little off our game. But any you could give us would be great, because we want the rigor to stay up. As an honors teacher and an AP teacher, I'm trying to keep my rigor up for my students because I want them to do well and be successful as they move on. But it's not going to be as good as it should be. And like they've already said, it's at the expense of our health and our families, and we can't do both. You have teachers who are literally in tears every day, or who are terrified that they're going to spread COVID to their families, so they are isolating themselves, and so they can't take care of their own mental health. So if we had a chance also just to be able to collaborate with our other teachers, especially at the high school, we have such large departments. I'm in a department of 17. I teach with 3 other teachers on the bio honors department, but the others have 8. To be able to have that time to collaborate together and to divvy up tasks, to be like, all right, you make this assignment, you make that. That way we're not all trying to do everything at once, would be unbelievably helpful, and we would very much appreciate it. One thing I will say, if we do go early release, and I know this is not in the plans yet, but if we could somehow consider the fact that at the high school we have blue and white days, so that we stagger those so that it's not always one of those. Because if you have a plan on, say, a blue day and all of our early releases are on blue days, we have now lost time because we are no longer getting our full plan because we're releasing early and shortening those time frames. So just as a thought to kind of keep it balanced, to try to help us get as much maximized time as possible. And the other thing I would want to say, I'm sorry, I try to not stare at my paper, I try to take notes. I would just like you guys to consider, I know you've asked us to please be graceful with our students, and I think the teachers are. We're still trying to work through the kinks of technology, them not being on. But if you guys could show some grace for us, and I know that you guys care about us, it's been a hard year, and we could use any bright spot that you guys could give. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Becky Spanier, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Pfeiffer, so I thought I'd come and give you an elementary perspective. This year, I'm the e-learning teacher for the high ability 4th grade, so I actually teach for all 6 elementary schools. So my grade book, I've got 41 courses in there because I kept them in their home schools. And I have to do attendance in 6 different schools, so I'm spending a lot of time doing that. My experience is I've been working 7 days a week ever since school started. Saturday, Sunday, Labor Day, I'm working it. I'm working 12-hour days during the week. Right now, if I wasn't here, I'd be at home working. Sometimes I work till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and it's very stressful, even at the elementary level as well. I'm not the only one, so the other elementary e-learning teachers in my school, as well as the other fourth grade elementary e-learning teachers, are putting in just as many hours as I am. The reason for that is because it takes so much time to put everything up onto Canvas. It's easy to do, and I'm really good with technology. I'm really good with Canvas, so I can't imagine those teachers who didn't know Canvas coming into this. It's easy to do for me, but it's very, very time consuming. I do it though because I want the best for my students. I want them to have the same experience they would have if they were with me in that classroom. But we're 5 weeks in, and I got to tell you, I'm getting burned out. I really am. I cry at least once a week. That's down. The first week I was probably every day I was crying. Ask my principal, because I've been in his office. It's not good for me, and it's not good for my students, because the more I get burned out, I guess the more it's going to affect them. So it's affecting elementary as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any of the board members have questions?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you all for what you're doing. I don't know how you're doing both in person and remote learning. You are all superheroes to me because I never agreed with that, and I am so sorry that that's the situation you have. Dr. Baraco, I don't know if early release will be the answer. I really feel like we have to figure out a full day to give these teachers per week to only with asynchronous learning.
I have a hard
There
time
shouldn't be
hearing.
any reason we can't give them a full day almost every week to be able to make these plans. If their kids have questions, we can sign on and they can ask questions, but they need time. Whatever we have to do, we have to give these teachers time, and we have to do it immediately.
Is there still a requirement by the state that we have to have so many minutes and so many days in the school year? Or has that been waived? No, it's still there? Still there, okay. Sorry to interrupt, Sandy, I just wanted to know that.
No, you're good. I really feel I don't even think an early release or a late start's gonna do it at this point. These teachers are working 18, 20-hour days, they're working weekends, they're working overtime, they need to take care of their families. We really, if you look at other schedules, there's other schools that are doing it, we need to figure it out for them. I'm done.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Baraco, I have a couple questions. Do you have an idea of where our community is at on what they would tolerate or find acceptable early release versus late arrival?
Well, I don't know, but we've got, 3,500 elementary parents who we're gonna put them in a situation where they have to make accommodations. Not saying they won't do it. They do it for fall break and they do it for summer vacation, but it'll be different for them. So I think we need to be sensitive to that, whether we like it or not. It is a factor, so I think we need to weigh it.
So with that, is there if some elementary parents can't get to the school until 3, is there going to be a way to keep those students?
Well, we'd have to look into it. I mean,
Can
where there's a will, there.
I almost feel like we have to have an asynchronous day like on a Friday. Parents can probably find places for their kids to go on a Friday, rather than each time that an early release day comes out. If they got into that schedule and you know, hey, from now on, Fridays are the day that are asynchronous, and if your kid needs to sign on, they can. If they don't, then they don't. That would help them, I feel, rather than giving them 2 early release days here or there. Those 2 hours, I really feel teachers need more time than that. That's just my opinion.
Dr. Rock, you have any more questions, Cindy? Did you
I
have
do,
any-
but go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
That's-
All right. I was also going to ask, you talked about lunches. Will that create a problem with our lunches if we're cutting, like if we decide we do a half day?
Well, I think, currently we have the e-learning folks who can come through and pick up the lunch 2 different days for 10 meals. So, there's always ways to adjust it, but it's less likely that a lot of people would swing by there for 1 meal
And
if
on
you took a
those-
whole day off.
those,
And if you do stay in school, you get those meals to kids.
Okay. And on those schools that are giving off Wednesdays, are they receiving any interaction with their teachers? Do you know that answer?
Well, I don't know about all of them, but the ones that I looked at so far, they're passive e-learning days,
Okay.
which is why when we talked about possibly doing something like Hobart, we were talking about it 1 day a month, not every week, as Mrs. Lessentine suggested. But we were also suggesting that for the first 90 minutes or so, that there would be an opportunity for students to reach their teacher before they log off, leave their work at the Canvas site, but then log off and go do their other stuff with their grade level teams and so forth.
Can you define passive e-learning?
That means that you can't reach out to your teacher and get an immediate question answered.
But what's the e-learning component then? Are the students independent workers then? Is that what's going on? They're doing-
That's what's going on in
Okay.
Valpo and Chesterton, yeah.
They're independent, students are independent working.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
And my final question is if we do decide that the half-day is where Lake Central's going, what time would you recommend those days are ending at?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we were looking at the 90 minutes because that guarantees that students at all developmental levels get fed.
Thank you.
Dr. Rocco? If we considered one of our days asynchronous, wouldn't that still count towards our hours?
I think they're counting it towards their hours because they're giving assignments in all classes. So it could be a little bit tricky for an elementary teacher if we're expecting them to do all subject matters. But I believe that's what they are doing in those other districts. And I haven't broken it down with them specifically because there are little nuances with each of those various districts.
Oh, Dr. Rocco, I just wanted to make a statement. I know you talked about the instructional time being important. The rigor is very important, but after listening to these teachers, we have to look at all these options for some time for them to prepare. Whether it is, like you said, it's an early release, later release of these students, or if it's e-learning, but we definitely need to keep in mind not only the mental, but this is going to take a physical toll on our teachers as well. So we definitely have to look at some sort of structure that we can give them time to prepare.
There's no question these are different times, and it's a different year. And so, we have to survive it until this thing passes, and it will.
Yeah.
We'll have a vaccine and or other therapeutics sometime. But for this year, I don't think we're going to be out of the woods even in the spring. I think it's going to linger. So we do have to consider what we do to survive this as a group.
Well, yeah, I wholeheartedly support getting together, like you said, next Monday and discussing this as well. And making a decision on that Monday as well.
I'm all for that myself.
Oh, definitely, but before we have that Monday meeting, as I'm listening to everybody talk, it's very stressful to hear the stress that you're under, and I can only imagine. But not only is it the prep time, but I think it's also having availability for our trainers, and from what I'm hearing, the trainers are stretched so thin. So I think, and I know that you had indicated you didn't want to move any teachers to be additional trainers, but boy, oh boy, there's got to be people out there as close as we are to Chicagoland that would have this knowledge of running Canvas and could help. Because I've heard so many teachers say, I just don't get Canvas. It's so deep, it's so rich. And I experienced it last year, and it is very deep and it's very rich. So not only do I think we need the prep time, but we need the tools to do effective prep time. And then the third thing that I'm thinking about is I'd like some information on these designated moderators, because if we have dual platforms going on in the classroom, that's great and fine and dandy that we do the extra prep time, but what about what's going on in the classroom? I hear the frustration in your voices of trying to tend to the individuals in your classroom physically, but also the ones online. So I think we need to explore that also. So I'd like some additional information on the designated moderators and how that could be helpful to our teachers. I know that we have Edmentum. Are we using that to the max? Can we not use that more with our e-learning students? I've asked that a couple of times. But before I make a decision on Monday night, I need that additional information. Because I think if we just do extra prep time, we're missing the beat. There's other elements that are very important, such as the trainer and the dual platform happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where I'm at on it. But I'm more than willing to absolutely meet and talk, but I think there's three avenues we need to cover when we do that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm good. I appreciate you all coming here tonight. I know how hard you're working. We hear it, we see it. Your mental and physical and emotional health is very important to us. Please don't ever think it's not, because it is. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. I know we're going to continue on with
Our
our meeting.
meeting, so if you want to
But they
stay, you
can-
can.
You can stay, but I know how busy you are if you want to stick around.
Thanks for coming, though. No, it's in our plan, though, so. Yeah, see, I don't know anything about it. I need to know more about
When
it.
we said you have a choice of e-learning or in person. Even Natalie Stevenson isn't doing both like us.
Yeah,
We bit off more than we could chew.
for sure. You're right. And I'm glad we're making adjustments.
All right. Thank you all for staying. 1, 2, 3. We'll move on with Mrs. Mucha. She's our Director of Human Resources Personnel.
Thank you. We're recommending that the following be approved, but I do want to bring your attention to a bus driver, before she retired in December. So I'm asking for your reclassifying and appointments and resignations and retirement.
Move to approve. Oh, Sandy's got it.
We'll take, Washington
I'll second that, Sandy.
I am an I as well. We'll move on to Mrs. Castaneda, Director of Secondary Education.
Thank you. My only item tonight is to seek your approval for the professional leave request.
Move to approve.
And a second by Mr. Marshall. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Start with Dr. Malko.
Aye.
Ms. Lessentine.
I'm sorry, I keep sticking with that volume.
Oh, okay. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall. Aye. And I am an aye as well. Thank you. Mr. Ramal, you have nothing left. We'll move on to Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Seuss. I just have two information items tonight for the board. My first one is to update you on the new parking lot addition to Holman. As I stated last time, I gave you an update. We've been done with construction for a few months, but we had to go through a process of final plotting for the town's request, and last week we did receive approval on our final plot. So Mr. Marshall and Mrs. Sue signed off on it tonight. I've got the Mylars, and I have to get a couple more signatures and give them back to the town for signatures, and then I'll submit them to the county probably within the next couple weeks. So that will all be behind us, and the town's very grateful for all this work we did getting that replotted. So if there's any questions, I'll go on to my next item.
Great job.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marshall. Next item, just a quick update.
Hang on a second, Mr. Leiter, have the board members seen the new parking lot at home? By there next chance. Beautiful.
Yes, correct. Yes, north side of the building. The old house was. Yes, exactly, Mr. Marshall. Just a final update on our spring and summer projects. The lingering item that was out there was the resurfacing of the high school tennis courts, and that was completed last week. So that everything's been done and checked off, and the varsity tennis team is.
Is that all new asphalt?
No, we patched all the cracks and did some repairs, and then it's just basically a surface. It's a coat, and then it's the paint. You see, I think it's 4 coats of paint though. So it looks really good.
So you're sure they're using that tennis court? And I'm not
Yes.
doubting you, but I walked over when I see the tennis match and they told me it was gone, it was away.
No, they were using them all last.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
It's very nice, thank you.
I see that Mr. James, our Director of Business Services, is not here, so who will be taking?
So I'll be handling his items, and the first item this evening is the public hearing on the 2021 budget, capital projects plan, and bus replacement plan. Mr. James presented the 2021 budget at our last board meeting on September 8th. These items were posted on the state's gateway system and on our website in the business department section per Indiana code. Now the public has an opportunity to make comments about what was posted. And so I would call on the public, and I only see a couple people from the public present besides our staff. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on the proposed 2021 Lake Central budget? Hearing none, I'll ask one final time, as Mr. James likes to do. And we have none. So since we didn't have any comments, we will formally adopt the budget at our next regularly scheduled meeting on October 5th. The public would again be able to comment on that since it would be an action item next time. Mr. James's only other item that is an action item is to ask the board to accept the donations received and given that were included in your packet last week. Seek a board motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call. Dr. Malkow?
Aye.
Ms. Lessentine?
Aye.
Mr. Baxo?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thank you. With that, do we have any public comments? We have none. So we will move on to board comments and considerations of future agenda items. Dr. Malkow.
You know, Mrs. Souza, I always get to go first.
Do you?
Does anybody else want to go first?
You just start to my
I'll go
left.
ahead and ask.
Howard wants to go.
All right, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Marshall.
Dr. Veraco, how will the Monday night meeting coming up be structured? How are we going to proceed?
Well, we're going to have ongoing dialogue with each of the board members to see after you've digested this information. And as I mentioned in the email and in this handout I gave you tonight, we have to post the meeting by Thursday, so we will want to have an idea roughly where we're going in terms of what that motion will be to give teachers additional preparation time. When we re-adjourn on Monday evening, it would be for one item only, and it would be for us to have a final opportunity to dissect or question how different things might work prior to the board taking a vote. And with Mrs. Lessentine at home, I would, ask her to give me a call to discuss it sometime tomorrow or Wednesday.
I'll withhold my thoughts and comments till Monday night.
Okay. Mr. Baxo?
I just wanted to say, again, thank you to all the teachers that came out tonight, expressed their concerns, and the ones that are watching in live stream as well, if they could be here, but they're probably, like they said, they're prepping for their future days. But we are definitely taking this all into consideration. What really hits me the hardest was listening to Ms. Castle talk about giving up a career that she loves after 20 years, and that shouldn't happen. That should not happen. All these teachers went into the teaching profession because they love kids and they love to teach, and they should not have to look for another job. And I don't want them to have to look for another job. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lessentine?
Yes, one of the things that came through clearly, which I didn't have to hear from them because I knew from talking to them how to talk to them, is that we have to have a routine.
Sandy,
Our students are not going to get
can't hear.
the rigorous maximum, most awesome education if their teachers are socially, emotionally broken. So we need to find this. We need to make sure it's built in.
Ask her to pause.
Sandy, Mrs. Lessentine,
It's not gonna be any.
we're having a hard time hearing you. You're cutting in and out.
Oh, okay, then I'll go ahead and wait. I'm just gonna say that we need to also look at curriculum to make sure that is there what can we cut out there to cut things back a little, not cutting the rigor, but I know at HF, we are very rigorous school and we cut 25% of our curriculum to help. So things we can do to help them, I would greatly appreciate.
Thank you. Dr. Malkow?
Correct. And I so agree with everyone's comments. And Mr. Ledyard, would you make sure that Mr. Cantu has my thanks for that project that he completed? Thank you. And Sarah and Teresa, if you would make sure that we have updated class size information for Monday's meeting, or actually before. I know that Teresa gave us a nice spreadsheet that had all the numbers and had the class sizes and they had the e-learning sizes listed. So if we could have that for the middle school and the high school, because I want to make sure that our class sizes are decent. Well, but I would like it before we make this decision on Monday. And you kind of know what your numbers are. I mean, your ADM just is that official report. So also, are we still having changes in placement? Is that an ongoing issue? I would want to know that information before making a decision Monday night. Okay, which. Medical or changes of. Right. Okay, so you're asking for verification then? Oh. Okay. So that's kind of minimized then. It's not at the level where it was. Okay, perfect. Because I know that was a big concern, the in and out, the in and out. Yeah, those were some questions that I had sent out a couple weeks ago. Yeah, those were just some questions I'd sent out a couple weeks ago, so I was needing some answers to those. So if you could have those to us, or at least to me before Monday, that would be greatly appreciated. All right.
So I agree with a lot of the comments that were made up here tonight, and I also thank the teachers for coming out. Dr. Rocco, I meant to ask you, if the COVID counts stay low after the 9 weeks, would you allow some of the students to come back to in-person after the 9 weeks?
Well, we'd have to have a discussion about it. We really were trying to get people to be committed to stay for the whole semester unless they have one of those extenuating circumstances. So our
Are you
objective with
hearing a lot of, are people calling, asking if those kids can come back?
some are, and some are looking to go the other way. And, you know, just from the information I've shared with you at the end of last week and then today, we have more staff members becoming ill, not necessarily COVID.
Right.
We're getting negative tests as, you know, more so than positive, but we also have a lot of people who are having to quarantine on account of family members testing positive. So, you know, I think that the next 4 to 6 weeks will be telling as we head towards colder weather and typical flu and cold season.
True, yeah.
And the difficulty with the symptoms of knowing which it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's certainly a question that people are going to continue to ask us, Mrs. Sue, so that's an acceptable one.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work to do those class lists and all those assignments again at 9 weeks, but yeah, dialogue is good.
Well, they're already assigned to a class, remember.
At the middle school
So,
and high school, are they?
so
also?
if they have an extenuating circumstance, they have a set of teachers. It's just the disruptiveness of moving them.
Moving them. Oh, you mean from the platform they're on now to the in-school?
Correct.
program?
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Varacco, board calendar and future activities.
Yeah, so we're back here next Monday for our additional meeting, and then our regularly scheduled meeting would be October 5th. And so I look forward to talking to you all this week as we continue to analyze what our best path forward is. I don't want to give anybody the impression that there's any done deal. I mean, this was designed to be an opening conversation. We've heard from some passionate staff members who are living it, and now we have to analyze the situation, compare ourselves, and then decide what we think is the best path for our community and our students and, of course, our staff.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right. We have-
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Dr.
Aye.
Okay.
No roll call?
Aye. I just tried. I got overruled.